How's everybody doing today? Today we're going to be doing another creation science seminar. We're going to be talking about Noah and the ark. What do we know about it? And then the story of Noah. If you would like me to come speak at your church, or if you have any questions, you can email me at godsohman@gmail.com. So we're going to start the story at Genesis 6 on verse 13. And God said unto Noah, the end of all flesh is come before me, and the earth is filled with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them from the earth. I will destroy them with the earth. Make ye an ark of gopher wood. Rooms shall ye surround the ark, and shall pitch it with and without with pitch. And this is the fashionable way in which you make of it. The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, the breadth of it 50 cubits, and the height of it 30 cubits. A lot of people say they don't really understand what a cubit is. Well, there's different cubics. There's the Egyptian cubit, which is about 20.67 inches long. There's the Hebrew cubit short, that's 17.6. The long is 20.4, and also they say that the 17.5 is short. And you have to have a length for everybody to follow, or else you won't be able to do anything. But everybody's cubit, they have it on their arms. It's the distance between their elbow to the tip of your middle finger, and that's a cubit. And since everybody's arms are different lengths, they have to basically standardize it. So that's why there's these different cubics that they listed in the Genesis record. Verse 16, a window shall thou make the ark, and a cubit should be finished above. So it's going to be 1 cubit high. It's going to go from the front of the ark all the way to the back of the ark. And you can see in this picture how small the animals and people would be compared to this large ark. And the door of the ark shall be set on the side thereof, with lower, second, and third stories shall thou make it. So it's going to have 3 different stories. And everybody basically says that the door is going to go in the middle. And they do that for a couple of reasons, because if you put it on the first floor, then the water's going to get into it. And if you put it on the third floor, it's not going to be very sturdy, so they always have to put it right there in the middle. Go to Genesis 7, verse 1. And the Lord said unto Noah, come thou and all thy house into the ark, for they have seen righteousness before me in the generation. And I find it really interesting that the Bible says, come thou into the ark. So basically, in order to say come into the ark, God has to be inside the ark with Noah. Of every clean beast shalt thou take unto thee by sevens, the male and his female, and of the beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and his female. So any animal that's clean, they're going to take sevens, and any animal that's not clean, they're going to take 2s. And I don't know if they take 7 males and 7 females, or they take 1 male and 6 females. I would assume it would be 1 male and 6 females. But they definitely need to have animals to reproduce after the flood's over. Of fowls also in the air by sevens, and make the female to keep the seed alive upon the face of all the earth. For yet 7 days shall I will cause it to rain upon the earth, 40 days and 40 nights, and every living substance that I have made I will destroy from off the face of the earth. Now I'll say that it's going to rain for 40 days and 40 nights, but the Bible, you'll see later, says that the mountains of the deep broke open, and it prevailed for 150 days. And Noah did according to all the Lord commanded him. And Noah was 600 years old when the floods of waters was upon the earth. So when Noah got into the ark, he was 600 years old. And Noah went in, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him into the ark, because of the waters of the flood, of clean beasts and of beasts that are not clean, and of fowls of every thing that creepeth upon the earth. And they went in 2 by 2 unto Noah in the ark, and the male and the female, as God has commanded Noah. And it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. And in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month of the 17th day of the month, the same day where all the fountains of the great deep broke up, and the windows of heaven were opened. And the rain was upon the earth for 40 days and 40 nights. In the same self day entered Noah, and Shem, and Ham, and Japheth, and the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them unto the ark. In Psalms 24:1 says, the earth is the Lord's, and the fullness thereof, the world that they dwell therein. For he has founded it upon the seas, and established it upon the floods. So this verse seems to say that the land is actually on top of water, because they founded it upon the seas. Psalms 33:7 says, He gathereth the waters in the sea together as a heap. He layeth in the depth in storehouses. So this is saying that there's a bunch of water in storehouses underneath the earth. Psalms 136:6 says, To him that stretches out the earth above the waters. So again, this is another verse saying that there's water underneath the earth. And Karl Barth wrote a book, and he talked about that there's going to be, above the earth, there's going to be a little layer of ice, and it's probably going to be, 1 to 2 feet, 1 to 2 inches long. Then you can have 1 to 20 miles of crust. There's a half a mile of water under the crust where the fountains of the deep came from. And the ice above the atmosphere is going to do a bunch of different things. And I have a different video if you want to check that out. It's the Big Bang Theory, and then the Garden of Eden. And also I have that in Genesis 1 and Genesis 2. But that way you can see why, people lived longer, animals lived longer and got bigger. But it's all part of the hydroplate theory. So here's Walt Brown's hydroplate theory. He says you've got the land, and below the land you have water that's stored up down there. Genesis 7:11 through 12 says, In the same 100th year of Noah's life, in the same day, where all the fountains of the great deep broke up, and the windows of heaven were opened, and the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And you can check out Seminar 6. I haven't quite made this video yet, but it's going to be on the green theory, how I think all this stuff gets put together. But this is the fountains of the deep broke up, so the water that was under the earth now gets shot up. And this is the windows of heaven were open, which could be rain, or it could be these fountains of the deep breaking the ice above the earth. So if you see that all the water that was below the surface was going to get shot up into the atmosphere, it's going to look a little something like this. And a cubic foot of rock weighs about 160 pounds. So 10 miles of rock would put 8,448,000 pounds of pressure per square inch on the water that's trapped beneath it. That's about 30 tons per square inch, or 58,667 pounds per square inch. One crack develops, allowing the water to squirt, and it can actually launch rocks into space. It's going to be so strong. And the debris in space that we see, that we hit, causes meteors, could have came from the Earth. So all this rock could have came into outer space. And that's going to explain why the near side of the moon has these great big huge craters, because we hit it like a big shotgun blast. And the far side is going to look like little small blasts because they get hit with the aftershock. In fact, the debris from space would later come back down to the planets, and it would cause a bunch of craters. And there's actually different crater sites all over the Earth. This is actually a big crater down in Winslow, Arizona. And it probably hit about 100 years after the flood. But during the flood, waters rushed out of the cracks, and the crust sank and split apart. So it's all going to be slippery now because of lubrication from the water. So the crust is going to move away from where it was. And the Mid-Atlantic Ridge is going to start raising up. There's actually a theory where if you actually take the fountains of the deep breaking up, it's going to make this thing all lubricated, and then continents are actually going to slide, and the continental drift is going to actually lift up. This is just a picture from the book in the beginning by Walt Brown, just showing this exact same thing. So the ground in the middle is going to come up, and then the crests are going to come down to the side. And that would explain the folded mountains that we see. And I think folded mountains are the best explanation by the lateral compression and the plate sliding. And you're going to see more of that in my video number 6. And all over the Earth, we have fault lines. And if you look at these fault lines, all the blue lines are going to be fault lines, and all the red dots are volcanoes. And it's very interesting that everywhere there's basically a fault line, you're going to see a volcano right next to it. And this is the San Andreas Fault, California. And today there's still some water trapped underneath the crust. And we know that because there's underwater drifts. You see right here, there's underwater springs that come up out of the water. And in order for that to be happen, that means that there has to be water below that. So there obviously is still water underneath the Earth. The fault lines can cause a lot of really bad problems, as you can see here. They can do all kind of crazy things. These are just a couple pictures showing what fault lines have done in different places. Earthquakes, fault lines, a lot of catastrophes. You can see this whole entire field just shifted. Earthquakes can cause a lot of really bad damage. I was going to try to drive down that road. 2 Peter 3:6 says, wherein by the world that was once, that then was, being overflowed with water, perished. This is a chart you can actually get from me if I come to your church, or if you know me personally for $5. Or you can go to drdino.com and you can buy them 6 for $30. Genesis 7:14 says, they, and every beast after his kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and every fowl after his kind, and bird after every sort. And they went into Noah into the ark, 2 by 2 of all flesh, wherein is a breath of life. And they that went in male and female, of all flesh, as God has commanded, and the door shut them in. And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased, and bore up the ark, and it was lifted above the earth. And the waters prevailed, and were increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark went up on the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth. All the high hills that were under the whole heavens were covered. So it's saying that this couldn't be a local flood, because all the high hills were covered. And the next verse says, 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. So 15 cubits above the highest mountain, they had water. So it had to be a worldwide event. And all the flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle and of beast, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man. Now this is the key thing. It says, and all whose nostrils were the breath of life, of all that was in the dry land died. And every living substance that was destroyed was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle and creeping thing, and the fowl of the heavens, they were all destroyed from the earth. And Noah remained alive, and that they were with him in the ark. And then it says, then the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. So the waters still kept coming up from the face of the earth for another 150 days. Genesis 8 verse 1. And God remembered Noah and everything, and all the cattle that was with him in the ark. And God made a wind to pass over the earth, and the waters assuaged. And the fountains also, the deep, the windows of heaven were stopped, and the rain from heaven was restrained. And the waters returned from off the earth continually. And after the end of the 150 days, the waters were abated. So after the 150 days, the waters started subsiding. It filled the earth for 150 days, and then after that time, it took time for the waters to start moving away. Verse 4, and the ark rested in the 7th month, upon the 17th day of the month, upon the mountains, plural, of Ararat. And the waters ceased continually until the 10th month. In the 10th month of the first day of the month were the tops of the mountains seen. And it came to pass at the end of the 40 days that Noah opened the window of the ark which he had made. And he sent forth a raven, which went forth to and fro, until the waters were dried up upon the earth. And he also sent forth a dove from him, to see if the waters were abated from the face of the ground. But the dove found no rest from the sole of her foot, and she returned to him unto the ark, for the waters were in the face of the whole earth. And he put forth his hand, and he took her, and he pulled her into the ark. And then he stayed another 7 days, and again sent forth a dove out of the ark. The dove came in to him in the evening, and lo, in her mouth was an olive leaf plucked off. So Noah knew that the waters were abated from off the earth. So he stayed another 7 days, and sent forth a dove, which returned not to him any more. And it came to pass in the 601st year of the first month, the first day of the month, the waters were dried off from the earth, and Noah removed the covering of the ark. And he looked, and behold, the face of the ground was dry. And in the 2nd month of the 27th day of the month was the earth dried. So you can see the timeline of Noah's flood. Noah enters the ark. In 7 days the flood begins. And after 40 days and 40 nights the rain stops. And then for 110 days it rained. The waters come up from the face of the earth up to the ark. After 150 days, the ark lands upon the mountains of Ararat. Then 73 days later, the tops of the mountains appeared. And then 40 days later, he sent out a dove. And then 7 days later, he sent out another dove. He sent out a raven. 7 days later, he sent out a dove. 7 days later, he sent out a dove again. And then 7 more days, he sent out a third dove. The dove didn't return. And then he stayed in the ark for 29 days, which was the first day of the first month. And then he stayed in the ark until the 27th day of the second month. And altogether, this is about a year and a month that he was actually in the ark. And God spoke unto Noah, saying, Go forth out of the ark, thou and thy wife, and thy sons' wives with thee. And if he's saying, Go forth out of the ark, that means he's also inside the ark with him. And bring forth with thee every living thing that is with thee, and all the flesh, both of fowl and of cattle, and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, that they may breed abundantly upon the earth, and be fruitful and multiply upon the earth. And Noah went forth, and his sons and his wives and his sons' wives with him. Every beast, every creeping thing, every fowl, and whatsoever creepeth upon the earth, after their kind, went forth out of the ark. And people ask me all the time, was there dinosaurs on the ark? Well, Noah was 600 years old when he went into the ark. And I think he'd be smart enough to know he needs to take a pink one and a blue one, because that's going to be very important later. I say that Noah probably did bring dinosaurs on the ark, but he brought babies. And he brought babies for a couple of different reasons. Number one, they're smaller. The biggest dinosaur fossil ever found was smaller than a football. You can see here in National Geographic, May of 1996. It shows you a regular egg, and it shows you a dinosaur egg. Number two, they weigh less. They also eat less. And they sleep a lot more. They're going to be tougher as well. And after the flood, they're going to live longer so they can produce more offspring. And the whole reason for taking them on the ark was so that they can reproduce afterwards. You know, even today we have a lot of small babies. Even though we have big animals, they have small babies. Genesis 7:14 and 15 says that he took all the animals that had the breath of life, whose nostrils were the breath of life, and animals that were on dry land. Well, insects breathe out of spiracles. They breathe through their skin and not nostrils, so they wouldn't bring any kind of bugs. And people say all the time, how do Noah fit millions of animals on the ark? Well, only took land animals, so there was no fish. And only those animals that had nostrils, so no bugs. And of course he's going to bring babies because they're smaller, that's just common sense. He's going to bring two of every kind, not variety. And since God made the kinds, I think he knows what he's talking about. God told Noah how big to build a boat, so he should know. And the question is, how many animals were there? Well, they say there should be about 8,000 kinds of animals that need to be on the ark. And so he took the beasts of the field and the fowls of the air, no fish or insects. And then skeptics also say that Adam could never name all the animals in one day. Well, if there's 8,000 animals, and I'm talking about 300 words a minute, it's only 26 minutes. That's basically one animal every 2 seconds. It would take about a quarter of an hour. And the question is also, how big was the ark? Well, the ark was very big to hold all those animals. Well, the question is, Noah's son had a son named Arphaxad. And Arphaxad's going to ask Grandpa Noah, how come we're the only people in the world? And Noah's going to tell Arphaxad about this whole entire story of the flood. And there's over 270 flood legends all over the world. There's one in Hawaii. It says, long after the death of Kananua, the first man, the world became a wicked and terrible place to live. And there was a good man left. His name was Nunu. He made a great canoe with a house on it and filled it with animals. And the waters came up all over the earth and killed all the people. And only Nunu and his family survived. There's a Chinese legend. The ancient Chinese legend called Hu King. He tells the story of Fu Hai, whom the Chinese consider to be the father of all their civilization. The history records that Fu Hai, his wife, his 3 sons and 3 daughters escaped a great flood, and only his family were the only ones that survived. And after the great flood, they repopulated the earth. The Tolkien story says the world lasted about 1,716 years, and it was destroyed by a great flood that covered even the highest mountains. The Toltec Indians of ancient Mexico said the first world lasted 1,716 years and was destroyed by a great flood that covered the highest mountains, and only one family named Coxcox survived. The Bible dates put the flood about 1,656 years after creation, so the Toltec legend was only about 60 years off after 4,000 years. The Babylonians have stories about the flood. And the Atlantis could even be a flood story. To Noah, the entire beautiful world sank beneath the waves. So the waters would have subsided right here in the mountains of Ararat. There's actually a town here, and if you go to this town, it says that the ark rested in the 7th month upon the mountains of Ararat. The mountains are plural because it could have been one of the many mountains of Ararat. There's actually four theories about the location of Noah's Ark. It was taken apart and the lumber was used for buildings. It rotted. It's still on the mountain, or it's in the valley. And this is actually Mount Ararat here. Many explorers have looked on Mount Ararat for the remains of Noah's Ark, but the Bible states that the ark rested upon the mountains, plural, of Ararat. The Hebrew manuscripts of Genesis reveal that Noah's Ark landed in the mountains of Utari, which is the whole mountainous regions in the area of East Turkey. This is Mount Ararat right here. And some think that Noah's Ark is on Mount Ararat. And maybe it is. Why would there be a giant gorge formed in the 1840s? This is the picture right here, released on March of 2006, the northwest side of Ararat. It looks like there's a boat-type structure right there. This is an article from Life magazine, September 5th of 1960. And it talks about the boat-like structure near the mountain, near Ararat. And you can see the boat-like structure right there. There's another picture over here. See, the ark ribs are exposed after the 1978 earthquake. You can see the top, the ark site before the 1978 earthquake, and then you can see the ark site after the 1979 earthquake. And this is a picture from up on top of the visitor center. You can see the boat right there. And some think this is Noah's Ark, 17 miles away from the visitor center. This is actually Ron Wyatt. You can go to WyattMuseum.com, and Richard Reeves is the one that actually he does the museum now. This is a Richard Reeves right here. He worked with Ron for years and now runs his ministry. And you can see right here, a boat, if it was split in half, it would have ribs on the side. And radar scan shows there's all kind of lumber in there. It looks like there's a really interesting structure. So they've actually found deck joist and deck support timbers. And you can see on the side what it would look like compared to the mountain there. They've actually found iron rivets as well at this site. It's really interesting. You can see the look part of a washer and different type of rivets. They've also found at the Wyatt Museum, at this place, they've actually found particle board. There's wood and then glue-like substances and then wood again. Here's another picture right here. You can see the layers of the glue substances in the middle of it. You can go check out Wyatt Archaeological Museum. It's a really cool place. And Ron Wyatt's wife actually took his information and wrote a book called The Boat-Shaped Object on Doomsday Mountain. It's about 274 pages. You can get it for about $30. There's a lot of theories about what happened. A lot of people think that the ark actually rested, and then over time, through lava and mud flows, it actually moved down to the bottom of the mountain. You can see there's actually this little piece of wood that's still on top of the mountain that would have been a rudder on the bottom of the ark. And in the book, they talk about, possibly what could have happened. Noah rested, got people off the ark, things like that. There's actually a place up here called Kazan. The place is called the Village of Eight. They found a bunch of petrified bark, anchor stones, and everything like that on top of the mountain. And the Karzan is called the Village of Eight because it's believed that Noah, his wife, his three sons, and his three sons' wives, which would be 8 people, rested right there. You can see Karzan right here, Village of Eight. And right here is where the actual Noah site is right now. This is actually the modern village of Kazan today in Turkey. And on 1987, June 20th, the government confirms this is Noah's Ark. They even built a visitor center on top of it. The government thinks it's the Ark, so they built a visitor center right next to it. Creation magazine says It has published at least 2 articles claiming this is not the Ark. I've studied the claims carefully, and I recommend you to study the evidence yourself and give Run Wyatt's ministry a chance to defend itself against their charges before you decide what to believe. I'm not positive there's evidence of the site being real, but it looks very convincing to me. This isn't the length of the ark should be 300 cubits. And remember, the cubic is from the elbow to the tip of the finger. So if you use the Egyptian cubit, which is 20.76 inches long, that's going to give about, if we use the Egyptian cubit, we're going to see that this area right here is actually about 515 feet, which is going to be 300 Egyptian cubits. And this is Noah's Ark compared to the Titanic. You can see the top there, and then the bottom is going to show you animals that would be next to it. 300 royal cubic units is about 515 feet. It's a really cool vessel. And they've also found, at the village of 8, they found these anchor stones. These anchor stones weigh a whole lot. They weigh about 4,100 kilograms. And there's anchor stones all over the place up there. And these giant rocks have curved holes drilled to the top of it. And the bigger rocks have even bigger holes. During the drought of the late 90s and early 2000s, the Sea of Galilee dropped way below normal levels, exposing scores of small anchor stones used over the centuries on boats there. They call this area the House of Anchor Stones. So they found anchor stones from all different kind of boats in the Sea of Galilee. So the ark landed, and the ropes were taken off of the anchor stones at the village of Kazan. And over the next 4,400 years, the ark drifts here with lava and mud flows. So people believe that these holes in the top of the rock is going to be for the rope holes to hold the anchor stones to the boat. They're actually called drought stones. And the purpose is when the waves are blowing, it's going to make the boat face the waves. There's actually a picture of what could possibly have been the ark with the drought stones on it. And if you read Josephus' book on page 20, it says the Armenians call the spot the landing place, and it shows its remains to this day. So even Josephus believed that Noah's Ark was real. And some scoffers have said that a ship over 300 feet long would bend and break going over the waves. But it wouldn't happen if they had a moon pool. The Soviet submarine K-129 was raised in July of '74, and it had a moon pool in it. The moon pool would provide a lot of interesting things. It would give stress relief for a long ship so it wouldn't bend and break. It would give air circulation. Every time they hit a wave, oxygen would get pumped into the boat. It would also be a place to dump refuge, so when the animals went to the bathroom, they could just push all that stuff into the moon pool. And people say the Bible is true, and man lived with dinosaurs before the flood. What happened to the dinosaurs when they got off the ark? There's a lot of theories about the extinction of the dinosaurs. This article says that maybe a meteorite impact killed them. This guy says that the dinosaurs had a lot of flatulence, which is basically farts, and that's what killed the dinosaurs. But I know exactly what killed the dinosaurs. Smoking. We've got scientific evidence right here with this picture. Smoking must have killed the dinosaurs. See right there? It's a cigarette. So what made the dinosaurs go extinct? What do you guys think happened? The dinosaurs lived in the ark would face a brand new world with a more hostile climate. And many probably died from the climate changes within the first few hundred years after the flood. You know, the average age before the flood was 912 years, and today it's 70 to 80. So the climate was completely different back then. And dinosaurs would have 2 problems after the flood. Many dinosaurs died after the flood due to climate changes. They actually say the big brontosaurus had nostrils about the same size of a modern horse. Well, if the atmosphere and the oxygen was different, he wouldn't be able to breathe. And the second problem was they had worse people were hunting them. There were thousands of legends of people seeing and killing dragons. The word dinosaur wasn't even invented. He was invented by Sir Richard Owens in 1841. Before that, they were known as dragons. In 1894, the dictionary, the word dinosaur doesn't even exist, but the word dragon does. In fact, the first definition for the word dragon says now rare. And if you look at the human population chart, when Noah happened, it was only 8 survivals. And over in 1 billion years later, I'm sorry, in 1800 there was over 1 billion people. So the population chart grew dramatically. And by 2000 we had 6 billion people on the earth. So if you have all these people, you need to make room for them to live. And if you've got a town where you have new people trying to live, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to get rid of any kind of threats. You're going to send out your best warriors or your hunters, and they're going to get rid of all the threats in the area. Man cut off most of the dinosaurs. First of all, they wanted meat because dinosaurs were a menace. To be a hero, save the village from the dragon. They want to prove their superiority. It's competition for land and also for medical purposes. Gilgamesh slayed the dragon. There's actually a Chinese legend of a famous Chinaman named Yu. This is after the Great Flood. Yu surveyed the land of China and divided it into sections. And he built channels to draw the water off of the sea. And he helped to make the land livable again. Many snakes and dragons were driven out from the marshlands when you created new marshlands. That's what you got to do. When you come to have a new area, you got to get rid of all the species that could possibly hurt you. Marco Polo lived in China for 17 years, around 1271 AD, and he reported that the emperor raised dragons to pull chariots in his parades. In 1611, the emperor anointed the post of a royal dragon feeder. Books even tell of Chinese families raising dragons to use their blood for medicines, and highly prize their eggs. Well, anyways, that's my video. I appreciate you guys watching it. If you have any questions, you can comment below, or you can email me. If you'd like me to come speak at your church, you can also email me. It's GODSOHMAN. And I appreciate you guys watching. You guys have a great day.